Wow. Diving into the world of learning support teachers, huh? Sounds like this career path really has you thinking.
Yeah, you've got a ton of info here. Guides, personal stories, even some futuristic research on learning support. It's a
It
lot.
is. And we want to make sure you're going in with, all the facts. No sugarcoating here, but we'll keep things inspiring too.
Love that. Got to have balance, right?
Absolutely. So let's just jump into it. This guide you've got here, it makes learning support teachers sound like part detective, part cheerleader, and part, well, learning ninja. What do they actually do all day?
That's the thing, right? Every day is different, but there's these like core parts of the job that are always there.
Okay, so walk me through it.
So picture this. You're working one-on-one, helping a student sound out words, then bam, an hour later you're doing fractions with a small group using, what are those called, the hands-on math things?
I get it. So you're constantly adapting, meeting those students right where they're at.
Exactly.
Gotcha. But that also sounds crazy demanding. And speaking of demanding, there's this differentiated instruction thing in the guide. What does that even mean when you're actually teaching?
I know, it sounds kind of jargony, but it's about like recognizing that each kid learns differently,
Yeah.
right? Some are visual, like diagrams and mind maps.
Right, right.
And then you've got your kinesthetic learners. You like gotta move, gotta touch to really get it.
So it's not one lesson plan for everyone. It's more like you've got this whole personalized toolkit for each student.
That's it. And tech. Huge part of it now. One article, a teacher used software to make like personalized learning paths for her students.
Whoa, they're not just teaching, they're designing these whole individualized experiences.
Totally. Using data from the platforms, to find those learning gaps and then create ways to help tailored to each kid.
Now that's next level.
Yeah.
Speaking of tech, this RoleCatcher stuff you sent, it's changing how aspiring learning support teachers prepare, even before the classroom, which is wild.
Oh, for sure. Those AI tools, right? They analyze job descriptions, match them to your skills. It's like,
It's like magic almost.
totally. No more sending out the same resume a million times and hoping for the best.
Right.
And get this, there are even AI platforms that help you practice for interviews, like giving you feedback on how you answer questions.
Wow. No more stressing about saying the right thing. Okay, so we've talked about the tech side, but what about the person? What makes a truly great learning support teacher beyond the gadgets and gizmos?
Ah, there you go. You can have all the tech in the world, but without these core qualities, not as effective.
Okay, so spill the beans. What are those must-haves?
Empathy, top of the list, no question. These students, they're going through things in school, out of school. A great learning support teacher, they get that. They connect, on a human level.
Right, it's about building trust, not just delivering a lesson, right?
Exactly. And to do that, you got to be a good communicator, too.
Which makes sense, but it's not just about talking with the students, is it?
Good point. Parents, teachers, specialists, got to talk to them all.
So you're like a communication hub, making sure everyone's on the same page about that student.
Exactly. And that takes finesse. Sometimes tough conversations with parents, advocating for needs, navigating the whole school system. It's a lot. But when it works, so rewarding seeing everyone working together to help a child thrive.
That's powerful stuff. But let's address the elephant in the room, or at least the one hiding in this guide. The low pay. That's a major factor, right? You can't ignore that when you're thinking about a career. Yeah, no doubt about it, salary matters. But I'm curious, what do the materials say about how learning support teachers actually feel about their pay?
It's such a key point, right? It's not just the number. There's this study in the guide. And learning support teachers, even though they often felt underpaid, they said the emotional rewards, like that was the best part of the job. Powerful stuff.
So it's more about feeling fulfilled by the work itself.
Exactly. Think about it. A student has been struggling with reading. Finally, they decode a whole sentence on their own. Or a child who just couldn't grasp a math concept. Suddenly it clicks and their face just lights up. Those moments, they stay with you.
Priceless, right? But the guide also mentions the emotional toll. It's a demanding job, so how do they deal with that?
Self-care? It's non-negotiable, honestly. You need empathy, you need patience in this role, and it's easy to give it all to your students. Setting boundaries, leaning on colleagues for support, putting your own well-being first, that's how you avoid burnout. The guide's really big on that.
Makes sense you can't help others if you're running on empty. Right. And speaking of pouring into your own growth, I noticed a lot of emphasis on professional development, constantly learning new things for learning support teachers.
It makes sense. This field, it's always changing. New research, new teaching methods, technology is always evolving. The best learning support teachers, they're always learning themselves.
For sure. Gotta stay ahead of the curve, bring those new ideas back to the students. And speaking of career paths, that document you shared, Career Pathways, it had some really cool options for learning support teachers to gain new skills, really move up in their careers. Anything stand out to you?
Well, specializing, becoming, say, a dyslexia specialist or an autism specialist, that really jumped out at me. There's such a need for that.
Hmm.
It's a way to make a huge difference for students with specific needs.
Wow, taking your knowledge to the next level, becoming a real advocate.
Exactly. And you don't always need years of school for that either.
Yeah.
The materials mention some great organizations doing certifications, specific programs just for learning support teachers.
That's fantastic. So many doors open up that way. It's funny, this whole technology thing, it keeps coming up, how it's changing the game for these teachers, both inside and outside the classroom. It's like a common thread through their whole journey.
It is fascinating, isn't it? We talked about those AI tools, the job searching, the interview prep, but it goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
It's changing how they track progress, how they personalize lessons.
Right. The guide talked about software that tracks student performance, like in real time. It finds those gaps, even suggests ways to help each student. Incredible.
It really is. Imagine having access to all that data. You can adapt your teaching right there in the moment, give support exactly when it's needed. You can even talk to parents and other teachers with so much more detail and insight.
It's like having a co-teacher, but it's an algorithm. Okay, maybe this is just me being old-fashioned, but is there a risk, of tech making the learning experience less human?
Oh, for sure. That's a big concern. People are definitely wrestling with that right now. But the thing is, tech should help us connect better, not replace those connections altogether.
Finding that balance, right? The
Yeah.
power of tech, but with that human touch, that empathy that's so essential.
Absolutely. And it goes back to those core qualities we talked about before. Empathy, communication, being adaptable. As tech changes education, those skills, they just become even more important.
So you evolve with the tech, you don't let it replace you.
Exactly. And part of that evolution is moving towards a more inclusive approach to education, which is something that comes up again and again in these materials you sent.
Absolutely. It seems like learning support teachers, they're in a perfect position to lead the way there, making sure every student, no matter how they learn, feels supported, feels valued.
I completely agree. It's about moving away from this one-size-fits-all model, celebrating the fact that different minds learn in different ways.
Hmm.
And that means changing how we think about it all and being willing to learn and grow right alongside our students.
And speaking of growth, that guide had some amazing stories, real learning support teachers making a difference. There was one, it really stuck with me, about a teacher who, and speaking of growth, that guide had some amazing stories, real learning support teachers making a difference. There was one, it really stuck with me, about a teacher who used a child's love of robots to help them get into math, stuff they were having trouble with before.
See, that's what it's all about, right? Meeting them where they're at, finding those hooks, making learning fun and engaging.
Totally. It's not just about memorizing facts, it's about getting kids excited about learning in the first place.
And that's what makes this such a rewarding thing to do. You get to be there for those aha moments, to see a child light up when they finally get something, to know you played a part in that.
It's about empowering those kids, helping them become the best versions of themselves.
Exactly. And that feeling, knowing you're making a difference, that's something you can't put a price tag on.
So true. Okay, so for our listener out there, the one who's drawn to this field, maybe a little unsure if it's the right fit, what's the big takeaway from all this? What do we want them to remember most?
Being a learning support teacher, it's a calling. It's not easy, that's for sure. It takes dedication, it takes resilience, a real passion for helping kids who learn differently. But the rewards, oh man, they're huge.
It's knowing that every day when you walk into that classroom, you have the power to change a child's life for the better.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And as you're thinking about all this, remember, learning support, it's not standing still. Technology's changing things. We're learning more and more about how different minds learn. This push for inclusive education, it's all creating amazing opportunities.
It's a field that's always moving, always growing, and the people who choose this path, they're the ones shaping the future of education.
Who knows? Maybe you, our listener, you'll be the one to discover the next big teaching method, the app that helps millions of kids. Or maybe you'll be out there fighting for better policies, making education more equitable for everyone.
Yeah, that's something to think about. So if this is speaking to you, if you live for those light bulb moments, then take that next step. Dig into those resources. Talk to some learning support teachers. See if this path feels right, in your gut. You might just thank yourself later down the line.
And hey, remember this, You don't have to figure it all out alone. There are so many passionate educators out there, a whole community ready to support you every step of the way.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope this has given you some things to think about, some inspiration as you make this decision. Until next time, keep those learning sparks alive.